Welcome to the program. You're with Arise News in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Ahead over the next 30 minutes, all of the global headlines you need to know about. I'm Charles Enyekolu, and you're watching an abridged version of Arise News Hour. Our top stories. Discussions are taking place in Doha between delegates from Israel, the United States and Qatar, aimed at restarting negotiations for a Gaza ceasefire and hostage release. There are hopes that Israel's killing of the Hamas leader, Eai Hertz, could create a new opportunity. We have an assessment. The Kamala Harris campaign has condemned the use of racist language at Donald Trump's latest election rally. One of Mr. Trump's warm-up speakers at a Republican rally in New York described the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico as a floating island of garbage. And a stark new warning about the climate change challenge facing planet Earth. UN experts say the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere surged to a record level last year, locking in temperature rises for decades to come. First tonight to the Middle East, where new talks about a ceasefire in Gaza and the release of hostages still being held by Hamas are taking place in Qatar. The negotiations are the first since Israel's killing earlier this month of the Hamas leader Eai Hertz, and there are hopes his death could create a new opportunity. In parallel to this, Egypt's President Fattah al-Sisi has proposed an initial two-day ceasefire on Gaza to exchange 4 Israeli hostages with some Palestinian prisoners. It's not clear whether this will appeal to Israel.
All the efforts being made with all partners and brothers are an attempt to stop the fire and bring in aid. Egypt, during the past few days, has made an effort to launch an initiative aimed at moving the situation and stopping the fire for 2 days, exchanging 4 hostages with some prisoners in Israeli prisons. Then within 10 days negotiations will be held to complete the procedures in the sector, leading to a complete ceasefire and the entry of aid. We say that our brothers in the sector are being subjected to a very difficult siege that reaches the point of famine. Of course, we are in pain over the ongoing daily genocide in Gaza. We are in pain over the famine created by the Israeli colonizer in Gaza, water scarcity, medicine shortage, closed hospitals, food scarcity, genocide in all its aspects.
That's the Egyptian president there, Fattah al-Sisi. Meanwhile, the Israeli military has issued an evacuation order for several neighborhoods of the southern Lebanese city of Tyre. The Israeli army said it would attack Hezbollah targets there. Residents have been told to leave immediately and move north. Earlier, the Lebanese media reported Israeli jets struck a neighborhood in Tyre, killing at least 5 people. In Israel, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been giving his reasons as to why certain targets were hit at the weekend in early morning airstrikes in Iran and not others. He said the military targets had been chosen solely on the basis of national interest and that Israel had achieved its goals. While the attacks have been widely condemned across the Middle East, including by governments that don't often see eye to eye with Iran, some in Israel have complained that the strikes didn't go far enough. Earlier, Iran played down the impact of the strike, saying that only radar systems were damaged, though its military said 5 soldiers were also killed. All the while, elsewhere, particularly in the West, there have been repeated calls to resist further escalation. Well, for more on all this, I'm joined now on the line by Eai Herz, a security expert who's got a background in national security and Middle Eastern affairs, is also the founder and CEO of 7 Seas Consulting. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let's start with that renewed effort to try to kickstart ceasefire talks in Gaza, which have stalled so far. How do you think that Egyptian proposal of a 2-day truce will go down? I mean, is it likely to be well received by the Israeli government? I understand this is a much simpler proposal to try and get things started.
having me. In my opinion, of course, I'm not any government spokesperson. I think that a ceasefire in order to return hostages is a positive thing. However, as we all know, I feel that no war started ever and ended with a ceasefire. There's always one side that wins, one side that loses. That's how you end the war. That's how you get to a negotiation. And I think that thanks to the pressure that Israel is putting on Hamas and on Gaza these days, allow these negotiation starts.
I suppose a potential problem here, Mr. Hertz, is the clarity on which Hamas's decision-making process is following the killing of Eai Herz. So this is something they could agree to try and test the waters, Israel, I mean, to test the waters of how clear Hamas's decision-making process is now that Eai Herz is no longer there.
Sure, I think that the objectives of the war, and we can talk politics all day long, but I think that the objectives were super clear. First of all, was to destroy Hamas' ability to govern Gaza and to launch attacks on Israel. Second is to disarm Hamas, and the third one is to release the hostages. So at this point, it seems like Israel killed most of Hamas's leaders, and we're now more open to the second and third stages, which are obviously the release of the hostages is high priority, and the negotiation of how and who will replace the government in Gaza.
And I know you spend a lot of time in the United States. The US, of course, being a key player in all of this, and the US presidential election being just over a week away. Is it unlikely that anything meaningful will happen this side of the election, or are the players just waiting to see how the chips will fall after the 5th of November?
It's hard to say. I would say that it seems that there's movements to both sides. I think that the US government seem to push to end this conflict. But I think that Israel eventually will have to work in its terms on how and when to do that, as Hamas for years, since 2006, are attacking Israel nonstop. And it got to this kind of escalation that Israel didn't have the choice but to retaliate and to stop Hamas aggression. So I think that, long story short, I think that regardless to the elections, I think that Israel will have to spearhead this situation, this negotiation, this hostage release, and this keeping our borders safe.
Well, let's turn to Iran. I imagine you've been watching the latest developments there closely. What's your reading of that situation? Do you think the direct tit-for-tat attacks between Israel and Iran are now at an end?
It's a good question. I think that if there's one thing I studied in my master's degree, which I studied national security with a focus on the Middle East, was, and I'll translate it loosely from Hebrew, is that you don't make peace with weak. If you're weak, I'm just going to take over. I'm just going to conquer you. And if I'm kind of putting it in perspective of Israel, I can ask you a question and ask when Israel was most respected in the world, after the Oslo Accords or after the 6-Day War? And I think we both know the answer. You make peace with strong. We make peace with a strong country that is willing to negotiate out of strength and not out of weakness. So I think that what Israel did now in order to basically get the okay from the rest of the world is Israel didn't attack the nuclear facilities and did not attack the oil facilities that Iran has, but they opened the gate by destroying some capabilities in Iran that if Iran will dare to attack Israel, then Israel will have probably the agreement from all the countries around the world to retaliate and to attack national security that's held by Iran.
And I mean, we've been listening and sort of assessing the rhetoric coming from both sides. I mean, would you say that the subtle message from Israel seems to be, I'm going to hit you, but not that hard, so you don't need to hit me back? Does that suggest that there are limitations and efforts by all sides not to exceed those limitations?
You know, I think it's kind of like, it's in a way, it's like politics. Right, I can see it, and I can threaten you day and night, and nothing will happen. But if I will, you know, give you a slap on your hand and tell you if you're going to do it again, something bigger might happen. So I think that in a way, Israel is not trying to escalate. Israel did not start the October 7th or before or after. It was a defensive war, like 99% of Israeli wars, aside of one war, which was the 6-day war, which was a preventive war. So I think that Israel never started any war, but Israel know how to end wars. And I think that this is a message to the world. So you need to decide, first of all, either don't attack Israel, or if you're attacking Israel, expect a reaction. So I think that Israel is not trying to escalate any war in the Middle East or any war with Iran. But on the other hand, Israel cannot suffer from Iran's proxies, and lately directly from Iran, basically, that attacked twice, a direct hit on Israel. That thank God that Israel had the Iron Dome, but if Israel did not have the Iron Dome, there would be mass casualties. So I think that Iran needs to think twice before it retaliates again, or before it respond again to the latest attack.
On that note, I want to thank you very much indeed. Eai Hertz, a security expert with a background in national security and Middle Eastern affairs, and founder and CEO of 7 Seas Consulting. Thank you very much.